Some conversations go perfectly well and still leave you feeling exhausted. Nothing awkward, nothing uncomfortable, nothing that should have lingered. And yet, when it ends, you feel unusually tired, not physically, not even emotionally in an obvious way, just quietly tired. Sometimes you replay what you said. You think about how you sounded. You wonder if you spoke too little or too much. Hours later, the conversation is still happening somewhere inside your mind. Sometimes not in clear memories, but in quiet fragments, a tone you reconsider, a silence you reinterpret, a moment you return to without fully knowing why. Not because anything went wrong, because something inside you never truly stopped. Not the conversation, but the part of you that was processing it. In social spaces, people often assume that energy is shared equally, that everyone is simply present, moving through the same moment together. But for some, being present is not a passive state. It is an active process. While others are speaking freely, some are listening more carefully than they realize, not just to words, but to tone, to pauses, to the subtle shifts in expression, to the feeling behind what is being said. They notice tensions no one names, discomfort hidden behind laughter, meaning that lives between simple sentences, and without intending to, they begin to carry all of it, even when no one notices they are holding it, even when the moment moves on as if nothing needed to be held. Some people don't just join conversations, they quietly carry them. In the middle of conversations, their attention is divided in quiet ways. Part of them is responding. Another part is observing. Part of them is engaged. Another part is quietly adjusting. They soften certain words, rephrase certain thoughts, hold back certain reactions, not out of fear, but out of a quiet instinct to maintain emotional balance, to keep the atmosphere steady, to avoid creating discomfort, to protect the fragile harmony of the moment, sometimes at the quiet expense of their own ease. Over time, this invisible effort accumulates. It becomes a form of work that no one sees. Even the person doing it may not fully recognize it. If this feels familiar, you've probably felt this more times than you've explained it. They only feel its aftermath. The strange fatigue after something that was meant to be simple. Because the brain is not just following the conversation, it is constantly predicting, adjusting, and evaluating it. Perhaps the exhaustion was never about socializing. Perhaps it was about how deeply you were paying attention. Some people do not just participate in conversations, they begin to hold space within themselves. They track emotional undercurrents, they absorb subtle signals, they carry the weight of understanding before understanding is even asked of them. In this way, presence becomes a responsibility, not because they chose it, but because awareness rarely asks permission, a quiet one, unspoken, unacknowledged, yet constantly active. And when the moment passes, what remains is the residue of that effort, a mind that is not yet rested, a nervous system that is not yet softened, a self that is still slowly returning to its own center. It is easy to interpret this as weakness, to believe that something is wrong, that you should be more relaxed, more detached, more naturally social. But what if this exhaustion is not a flaw? What if it is simply the cost of a certain kind of awareness? Some move through social spaces lightly, others move through them with quiet attention. And attention, when sustained long enough, can become heavy. Not because connection is burdensome, but because depth requires energy, and genuine presence is never weightless. To be attuned is to be affected. To be perceptive is to be involved, and involvement, even when invisible, changes the inner landscape. There comes a point when silence begins to feel restorative, not as escape, not as withdrawal, but as a return. A return to a space where nothing needs to be monitored, where no atmosphere needs to be balanced, where no emotional weight needs to be carried. In silence, the mind loosens its grip, the body remembers stillness, the self slowly gathers itself again. This is not isolation, it is recalibration, a quiet realignment with one's own rhythm. Perhaps what drained you was never the people themselves, but the quiet effort of holding the moment together from somewhere within. And once this is understood, the exhaustion begins to feel different, less like a personal failing, more like a signal, a reminder of how deeply you were present, and how rarely such presence is recognized while it is happening, because not every kind of presence is visible. And not every kind of effort is meant to be seen. Sometimes it is enough simply to notice, and in noticing, to allow yourself the gentleness of rest.